Welcome to the Exit Strategy, your no bullshit guide to divorce with the experienced attorneys from New Direction Family Law. Unfiltered discussions to help you move from victim to victorious and from bitter to better.
Hi, everyone. Elizabeth Stevenson with New Direction Family Law.
And Sarah Hink, Elizabeth's law partner in crime, also an attorney at New Direction Family Law.
One of our, what do we have now, 6? 7? 7, I think, yeah. So, and still just Chris.
Yeah, the man. We have one man attorney.
That's right.
Yes, and of the firm, of the 7, 3 of us are parenting coordinators.
Correct. And what might a parenting coordinator be? Because that's what we're going to chat about today.
That's what we're going to talk about today. And when I explain this to a lot of my clients, when I recommend a parenting coordinator for them, all of them are kind of like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That'd be really helpful. So a parenting coordinator in North Carolina, at least, is either going to be an attorney or a mental health professional that's gone through this course that it will certify you pretty much to become a parenting coordinator.
Right.
And the parenting coordinator is either appointed by the court or parties can agree to appointing a parenting coordinator in their case, but it's for co-parents and it's used in high conflict cases or just when the parents cannot agree on things very easily.
Right.
And the role of the parenting coordinator can either be to help these parties come to an agreement on issues. So they'll talk to them, well, why don't you consider this? Take information, help them work together to decide. Or in some cases, they just make that decision for them.
If they can't agree.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also modeling, I think, to help them learn to co-parent. Because we're not going to be in your life till you're 18. Your child's 18 for the most part.
You don't want that.
No. And so a lot of it is teaching them how to communicate with each other. Because a lot of times, especially if you had like a stay-at-home parent who did 90% of the heavy lifting, they're used to making those decisions. And so now this person who divorced me is now telling me what we should do when he never went to a doctor's appointment or picked the kids up or any of that. So it's really, and I get that. I think it's really hard to let that go.
Right. And
sometimes.
It's roles that you have developed through your relationship. And maybe they were more unspoken than not, that one person had more demanding job and the other person would do the decision making. I know everything about their IEP at school.
Correct.
I managed their medications. I was the one that did this and that for the children. I know more. I need to make that decision, not him or her.
Right.
But the court at that point
doesn't look at it that way at all.
They're like, okay, I understand that there were different parenting roles during the relationship, but now
we don't have a relationship anymore, and so things have changed, and so the way you parent is going to change.
Yes.
And so that's where I think a lot of the times the conflict comes in, because you get your back put up about, who do you think you are telling me what to do?
Yeah, that or just personality traits.
Right.
Like you're going through a separation and your ex-spouse is a narcissist or, has those tendencies to want to be just a controlling person.
Right.
Or a lot of times people just have feelings. And unfortunately, those feelings come out in wanting to control the decisions.
Correct.
And wanting to have the final say. And that's just their personality. And that's probably one of the reasons why you guys got separated and divorced.
Right.
But now you still got to co-parent with that person.
Right. You're stuck with this person for the rest of your life. Not at 18, because then you're going to go to college, they're going to graduate, they're going to get married, they're going to have babies. So y'all are stuck for a really long time.
Right. And say dad moves to Durham County and you have 50-50 custody and your child's about to start elementary school. Well, whose address is going to be used for school purposes?
Right.
And that's not an agreement. Then how are you going to make this decision?
Well, that's a problem a lot of times. In court orders or separation agreements, it just says joint legal custody, which is you have to agree on health, education, and welfare, the big decisions. But then it never says, well, what happens if you can't agree? So that's why people end up at court a lot, is because they couldn't agree, or somebody made a unilateral decision. Okay, well, we can't agree, so I'm going to sign them up. Durham County is going to be where they go. That's a contempt, because you didn't consult with me or we didn't agree.
Yeah.
And then you get to court, and then the court says, okay, I'm going to appoint a parenting coordinator, because obviously y'all cannot agree.
Yeah, cannot come up. Imagine that. People who have divorced and broken up cannot
agree. I know.
Yeah. So that that's a pretty simple example of the need for a parenting coordinator. But there are those cases where people just cannot even communicate with each other on a day-to-day basis.
They call it, like parallel parenting. They suffer the other person at exchanges, but that's about all they can tolerate at that point.
Or there's over communication, a lot of communication back and forth, none of it really productive.
Right.
A topic just about, hey, I'm 5 minutes late to the exchange turns
It's
into
always like you. You're always late, and then
Yeah.
it just gets off track and doesn't have anything to do with the children at all.
Right. So a parenting coordinator is going to work with both parties. They're,
Right.
neutral. They're not, one party's alignment or anything like that. It's not confidential. So the parenting coordinator, will work with you. Okay, dad feels like he should play baseball. Mom doesn't want to do the baseball. Trying to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to agree about this baseball thing? Oh, grades are involved. Why is he not getting good grades? Mom wants to not do that.
Right.
And the parenting coordinator might ultimately make a decision where, the child can't play baseball because he has C's or something like that. Something that you never thought a third party was going to make a decision about your kid.
Right.
But if dad still signs him up for baseball, then the parenting coordinator can actually file a report with the court and say, Judge, you need to hear what this guy did.
Right.
He went over my decision and he signed him up for baseball.
Right. And so when we make a decision like, okay, you can't play baseball, that's put in writing, given to everybody. And it's not an order per se because the judge hasn't signed up, but you got to follow that as a parent. And if you don't, there's some pretty big consequences to that.
Can be contempt, can reallocate any kind of fees for the parenting coordinator.
Correct.
Typically, you split those fees 50-50. And so there can be repercussions. And we've seen some cases where, parenting coordinators will actually change a custody schedule.
Yes, we have.
We don't know if that's, we all have our own feelings whether that is something that a parenting coordinator
that you can't
can do.
substantially change it, but that does happen. And then they make a report and then you go to a hearing. The judge can modify your order based on your behavior. So there's some big consequences to that.
There are, but it's also can be very helpful.
Correct.
And that's what I like to tell my clients. Like, okay, we're going to court or running to court, threatening to run to court, every other month.
Right.
Well, you can't get into court for months, first of all, and then
Right.
you're paying your attorney's fees, but a parenting coordinator will actually cut those costs generally because you're splitting one person's fees, who are a lot of times will be lower than your attorney's hourly rate.
Absolutely.
And you can actually get things accomplished.
Like if you go back and talk about the school issue, by the time you got, let's say that reared its head, even today, you might not get in court until certainly before school starts again. I mean, maybe June or July, but if you can get a parenting coordinator who can make that decision for you tomorrow if need be.
And if you don't want the parenting coordinator to make a decision for you,
then try to work with your other parent. Exactly.
Try to work with the other parent to keep those costs low, is communicate. And a lot of times we will give parents some books to read, recommendations to follow on communication skills, and really go into that and use that method. And it might be easier for one party than the other, and that's typically what happens in cases where there's a parenting coordinator. But, try the parallel parenting. Try to keep your communication direct and focused on the subject.
Factual, right.
Keep the feelings out of it.
Right.
They have AI now where you can kind of
Right. And then, I always recommend Our Family Wizard, which a lot of people have talked about, but that's how the parents communicate. And the court can see it. It's a really great device because it can do a tone. Like you can type an email in and it'll, you might want to, won't say this, but you might want to rethink how you said that. And it'll give you a notice that probably this is not what you need to be sending.
Yeah. And if that keeps happening, if your co-parent sends you very negative or derogatory messages and the parenting coordinator's involved, there's going to be repercussions.
Right. And they can tell you can communicate once a week unless it's an emergency, and here's what you need to talk about only. And they can put some parameters in place. So it can be helpful. And then you get in the habit of doing it. I mean, our goal is generally it's a 1 or 2 year appointment. And then by then you hope that they've been able to make some progress and they don't need you anymore is what the bottom line is that we hope happens. You know?
Hey guys, it's Jen with New Direction Family Law, and if you yourself have been through a divorce or you know someone that's contemplating a divorce, then you know how important it is to make sure that you know your legal rights or your friend knows their legal rights and options to help develop the best plan for them and their family moving forward. At New Direction Family Law, we have over 30 years of combined experience protecting the rights of our clients in family law matters. We aggressively advocate, we aggressively support, and we absolutely educate our clients to achieve the best possible outcomes. So if you or someone you know are facing these questions or contemplating separation or divorce, give us a call to schedule an initial consultation today. You can reach us at 919-719-3470 or reach out to us via our website at newdirectionfamilylaw.com.
And I tell other clients, if it's not going to change, then it's a neutral that'll go to court and it will be beneficial for your case.
Right.
Because those There's some people with very strong personality disorders, what have
Agreed.
you.
Agreed.
And they're just really not going to change. And the
No.
court hears his testimony, your testimony, and they make a decision. A lot of times it's 50-50
Right.
because they don't spend that much time with
Correct.
you. And a parenting coordinator is really going to spend a lot of time with you if it's necessary.
Right.
And they can see the ins and outs. They can see how he or she communicates.
Right.
They can, see issues with the children arising from that. And then if you have this parenting coordinator that files a report, goes to court, the judge is going to listen to them most times.
All the time. They generally listen
And follow
to
the
them.
recommendations of the
parenting coordinator.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it can be a really beneficial tool in your weapon box to, get your case in front of a judge and have this neutral third party,
Right.
really validate what's going on.
Right. Because sometimes people think you're crazy because the other person presents so well.
Yeah.
That could possibly be happening. But then, as you say, you've got this neutral third party that can say, yeah, that really is happening.
Yeah. And it is detrimental to the
To
kids.
kids,
And I think
exactly.
the court should change
to
the schedule.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what decisions can we make decisions about?
There's usually, there will be an order that will, their form order has little check boxes actually. So
Right.
it can be anything from the diet of the children
Right.
to what they wear,
Right.
school, education, medical decisions. Although generally you just follow the physicians.
Patient or the treating professionals generally the best thing.
I'm
to
not
do.
a doctor.
Right. I'm not either.
Yeah. And so there's a whole list of what they can and cannot make decisions on. And like you said before, the statute, they cannot make substantial changes to the court order.
right.
So that would be typically if you have a week on, week off schedule.
To change to every other weekend.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a big change.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
And then there's another, it's not a box, but it says other.
Mm-hmm.
So really, you can tailor it to whatever is important to your family
Mm-hmm.
need. Because the check boxes might not always do that. But you can get as simple as you want or as detailed as you want or not. It's really tailored to each family, I think. And it's great. I love it.
Yeah, and there's a court-appointed list. So if you cannot agree with the other attorney, the other party, who your parenting coordinator is going to be, then there's a list the judge can pick from. Like I said before, it can be an attorney or it can be a mental health professional.
Right.
And I think they're different styles.
I agree.
For sure. I think the mental health professionals will be a little bit more soft with, let's try to work together, kumbaya, for a little bit longer than attorneys. And attorneys will eventually be like, okay, enough of this. We're not going anywhere.
We're not getting anywhere. We're not making any progress or anything like that.
Yeah.
I agree. And so high conflict cases, you can agree to have a parenting coordinator. So you can enter by consent and not really have to have a hearing. But you do have to go in front of the judge, and the judge tells you what's going on and what you have to do and explains it all to you. And then you make an appointment with your parenting coordinator, sort of like an intake session that's separately with each other.
And that process can look a little different, parenting coordinator to parenting coordinator.
Right.
Some of them want to meet with everyone together. Some of them will meet with people separate.
Right.
Sometimes they may talk to the children. Other times they won't. So it really is a case-by-case basis.
Right. And the point of really a parenting coordinator is one to help you co-parent better, but it's also to keep you out of court.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And so let's say you're preparing for a 2-day custody trial, it's going to cost $30,000 this week.
Yeah.
Parenting coordinator is not going to even touch that. I mean, the retainers, it's not free for sure, but it's not that. It's $5,000 something, and you're splitting that cost.
Yeah,
too.
you're splitting it typically 50-50. And like we
Right.
said before, in most all the orders, it says that the parenting coordinator, the PC, can reapportion. So if we have mom who is constantly
Right.
calling, emailing the parenting coordinator with issues that really aren't an issue or shouldn't be an
Right.
issue, the parenting coordinator can say, you know what, on this last month bill, I'm actually going to have mom pay for 70% of
Right.
it and dad's going to pay 30.
Right. So, I mean, I think that's fair and reasonable, and it gets people's attention, and they stop. What you hope is that they stop doing that.
Yeah. So if you're listening out there and you have an attorney, if this is something you want to learn more about, we have information on our page. But speak to your attorney about filing a motion. You can set the motion for hearing. But do know that a court or the judge can actually do it without a motion pending.
Correct.
So you can be in the middle of a 2-day custody trial
Right.
and ask for one, or the judge can just say, hey, y'all are fighting so much. This is high conflict. I'm concerned about the children because of the amount of conflict in this case.
Right.
So I'm going to appoint one on my own accord. So the judge can do that.
Right. Which is good. I mean, that's their job, is to make
Yeah.
sure. I mean, they're the standard is the best interest of the child. And, if you're in court for 3 days and you can't, that means you can't agree on something. So almost by definition, you were a high conflict.
Right. Or even like in the temporary orders, when you're in there for only an hour or two, like that's all the time the judge has to decide your case.
Right.
If there's I like to show the communication between the parties always, so the judge gets a feel of
what it's
how
like.
the communication is.
Right.
And at that point, you can say, okay, well, this person is obviously controlling and manipulative and just bashing this other parent.
Right.
And even if the children don't see that communication, it's going to have an
Still
effect
has
on
an
them.
effect on them. I agree with that.
Yeah. So
I agree with that. And so I'm a parent coordinator. You're a parent coordinator. Kelly McGonagall in our office is a parent coordinator. But then again, you have to think about personalities of your clients too. And we all know each other, so we know what somebody's personality is like. So I always think about that too when I suggest a parenting coordinator for somebody.
yeah, and even goes down to genders. Like, do you think he'll respond better to a
what-
man
right,
or
exactly.
or a woman?
Right.
And we probably have 80 to 20% of like most of them are women in our area. And if you're another
That is
attorney
true,
out
but
there
are
listening,
some
tell
men
us.
out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're an attorney listening, really, we're desperate for them. People really, I think it's a need. It's sort of like it's a tool that people really are desperate to have sometimes.
And I will also let people know that it's very taxing on the parenting coordinator. I mean, we need more parenting coordinators, and so many of them are burnt out from these kind of cases. And that makes sense. If they're high conflict, they're fighting with each other, they're going to fight with you.
Right.
And I've seen some, examples of pages and pages and pages of one email being sent to a parenting coordinator, and that happens 3 or 4 times a week, and you're having to spend your time reading that, working with these people who probably have some mental health issues.
Right. And that's a fine line to do. And as a parent coordinator, as you said, we're a neutral third party, but sometimes a party feels like you're aligned with the other party, and that makes our job just sort of doubly difficult, I think.
Yeah. And you're not aligned with them, but maybe you
make a decision you don't like, doesn't mean we're aligned with them. But again, our goal is the best interest of the child too. That's where our focus is.
Right.
For
and
them.
trying to help people learn to communicate
Correct.
in a healthy manner.
Right.
That's what the children need too.
Right,
'Cause I can't imagine what these parents go home and say to their kids, even if it's just accidental, flies out of their mouth, like, oh, your mom is such a
Correct.
bitch or something like that. And it's like, what are you doing?
Right. But you're welcome to go online on our website, newdirectionfamilylaw.com. Call us. We can have an initial consultation with us and talk about if this is something that you think you need. We can walk you through that and talk about how the process is of filing the motion and that sort of thing. And you can agree to consent and enter into it with the other. I've done like 3 of those recently. I mean, which is really good.
Yeah, it's very beneficial, especially given how backed up our courts are.
I agree.
mean, you have a problem with dad, well, you're not going to get into court about it for
not
3
gonna
to
happen.
6 months.
Not going to happen.
So let's see if we can get something accomplished now.
Right. So give us a call, give us a ring, come see us, talk about parenting coordinator, and we'll see if we can we can do and help your
I
family.
know it's scary to have like a third person involved in your parenting, but
you got to
sometimes
trust the process sometimes.
Yeah, ain't that some shit?
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review. You can visit us at newdirectionfamilylaw.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at the exitstrategy_podcast or email us at exitstrategy@newdirectionfamilylaw.com. We'll be back next time with more no bullshit content about life, divorce, parenting, relationships, and everything in between.